Hi, my name is Anna and welcome back to my channel. It is already time for my quarter to wrap up, and I think this was a pretty decent reading quarter. I did have one book that was a little bit on the lower rated end, but other than that, I think it was pretty good. I did have a couple of 5 stars actually. So let's go ahead and get into my reading stats. I realized I did not figure out what my average rating was for this quarter, so I will just go ahead and put it on the screen here. I'm really wondering what that number is right now, but there it is. This quarter I spent $29.33 on books, and I think part of the reason for that is because I bought a couple of newer ones. I'm looking at them right now. I can't remember. I think I did purchase a couple from the used bookstore, and that was like $5, and then the rest of the money was spent on a couple of newer books. But I do believe that the books that I purchased this quarter I also read, so that's good. Okay, so for my ratings this quarter I had 2 5 stars, which is fantastic, 6 4 stars, 1 3 star, and 1 2 star, which was unfortunate, but there it is. I read 7 new to me authors and 3 authors that I have read from before. I read 4 general fiction, 3 mystery thrillers, 2 magical realism, and 1 YA. As far as acquisitions go, 7 of these books I already owned prior to this year. 2 of them I purchased, and 1 was an ARC. So let's just go ahead and go through all of the books that I read this quarter, and then I will talk about the best and worst books of this quarter. So the first book that I actually completed was the ARC that I had gotten, and this was Habits of the Sea. This was actually one of my quarter 3 anticipated releases, which I think I actually forgot to mention in that video, but I believe by the time this video comes out, it will be releasing, or it will have released. I think the release date is July 7th. So this book actually follows a woman who, when she was a child, she comes across this mysterious floating island, and she goes on to this island, meets this man named Clay, and when she goes back to shore, it turns out that the few hours that she thought she had spent over there had actually been, I think, like a week or 2 weeks, and people were searching furiously for her, trying to find her. It turns out that this island is like this fabled island that people have spotted over the years, and it's just a floating island, so it disappears and then reappears where people are able to see it kind of near land, and then it disappears again. She has not been able to forget about this island, and so as she gets older, even into adulthood, she is still trying to grapple with this memory. One day this island is spotted again. She travels over there and is able to get to this island again, and she encounters Clay a second time, and he has not aged at all. So this story is basically about the two of them. It is about this island, and it is kind of a dystopian novel. It is magical realism. It is romance. There were so many things about this book that I absolutely loved. I love books that play with time, and this most certainly did that. Throughout this book, you are getting glimpses of things changing and the outside world versus what is happening on this island. Overall, I really enjoyed this story. There were bits and pieces of it that I didn't like. The romance for me, I was not a fan of. If this is something that you are looking into reading, just be aware that there were a few open door scenes. There was actually what felt like a whole section of the book that once the romance started, it was just open door scene, open door scene, open door scene. And then it finally got back to the story after that. So that part kind of lost me a little bit. I didn't love that. I skimmed over it quite a bit, and then it got back to the story and it was good again. And there's also some language in there. There is some mentions of loss, just some content to look into, but otherwise it was a very good book. I gave this a 4.25. Next up, I read Abscond. This was a short story, I believe, that I had gotten from Amazon First Reads. And I have a book from this author on my TBR cart right now called The Covenant of Water. So this is the same author, and it was nice being able to read like a short story from him to see if I would be interested in his writing, and I absolutely loved this book. This is pretty much just a short story following a boy. I can't remember how old he is, but he loses his dad, and it's a book about that loss. You get a little bit of like the culture and how loss looks like for this family. And while it was a really sad story, it was also really good, and I could actually see this being like a full-length novel. But at the same time, I'm glad that it was a short story because it was such a good short story. I gave this one a 4.25. I would definitely recommend it. I believe it had some language. It had like sexual references. It was coming from this boy's friend toward like an older woman. So that wasn't great, but outside of that, this was a great book and I would recommend it. The next book I read was The Unmaking of June Farrow. This book follows June as she starts like seeing and hearing things that aren't there, and suddenly this door starts appearing, and it appears kind of in random places. There is a whole mystery around her mom's disappearance. She was brought up, I believe, by her grandmother, and one day June actually ends up walking through this door that appears, and this door takes her into the past. This was another book playing with time, and it was really good. I felt like I had so many questions though in this book, and the way that things were explained, I could not quite wrap my head around. And so I ended up kind of just having to be like, okay, the author thought this through, so it must make some sort of sense. But I do remember at the end of this book, I had to look up how the time stuff worked because it was very confusing. One of the things I did not love about this book was that one of the antagonists was the town's pastor, I believe, and the view of God and religion in general in this book was very negative. So that was a little bit of a downside. It was kind of unfortunate, but it is actually a big part of this story. So if that's something you don't like, I would maybe avoid this. Otherwise, this was a good story itself. I liked most of the characters. I like books that get you thinking, and this was definitely one of those. So this was another 4.25. Next up, I read And Then There Were None. This was my first Agatha Christie book, and I loved it. This book pretty much follows a whole bunch of characters who are invited to an island. Once they are there on this island, whoever the host is that they're thinking is supposed to be there is not there. And one by one, all of these characters start dying. And the whole mystery is trying to figure out who it is that is doing this. The funny thing is, this book actually ends with an explanation, but I was reading this on my Kindle and I almost missed it. So the story kind of ends, I guess, and my Kindle thought that that was the end of the book. And so it, had the little pop-up that said that it was the end of the book. Do you want to rate this? And I was like, okay, what happened? Thankfully, I ended up closing that and trying to go ahead to the next page, and it turns out that there is like a little ending to it. And I'm so glad that I saw that because I almost missed it. But yes, this book was fantastic. This is just such a classic mystery. I ended up giving this a 5. I do not give out 5s easily, but I could not imagine rating this any other way. It's just the perfect mystery, really. So I loved that. I am definitely going to read more Agatha Christie in the future. Okay, we are moving on to May now. For my first book in May, I read The Housemaid is Watching. This is the third book in the Housemaid trilogy, and I really enjoyed this. This one is different from the first two. So if you have read the first one, the first and second one are pretty similar. The third one is its own thing. In this book, Millie is not the housemaid. There is another housemaid. And there is just a whole mystery of what is going on with, I guess, the housemaid, the neighbors. There is also like this whole little thing going on with her husband, who that was actually part of the book that I didn't care for, was that her husband is, in the other books, very open with her. He doesn't hide anything. And in this book, he was hiding so much. It just seemed very off for the story. It didn't really match his character in the other two books. And so that part I did not love because it just felt almost a little silly. And these books are not like super believable books. They're just fun. But I do wish that Freida McFadden had stuck a little more to his original character. And I feel like that would have made this book a lot better. But regardless, I still enjoyed this. I gave it a 3.75. Next up, I read Her Pretty Face. This book had been on my TBR forever. I had this sitting on my cart for the longest time. And so I finally got to it and I was so disappointed. I did not like this book at all. I wanted to DNF a couple of times. The language was not good. The story itself was honestly disappointing. So this book follows Frances. She is basically feeling like an outcast as a mom in her son's school. This school has like cliques among the moms, and she does not feel like she fits in. And she has a friend named Kate who absolutely would fit in, I guess, but chooses not to be a part of this group of moms. So the two of them actually connect and become friends. The disappointing part was that I thought that part of the story was them becoming friends, but when the book starts, they are already friends. It had already been like a few months. So I was already kind of disappointed when I started this because I didn't realize that that's how the book starts out. We don't actually get a whole lot of background on how they became friends. Then as the story goes on, it gets weird. One of these characters is not who they seem. It just wasn't what I was wanting it to be. I didn't like the way that the story was told. It was pretty graphic at times. It deals with some things that happened with children, like underage, I don't know, teenagers, I guess, and it's descriptive. And I didn't care for that. The whole story was just kind of, it just felt icky and I didn't like it. I gave this a 2 and I will be unhauling this. The next book I read was Fly Away. This is the second book after Firefly Lane. I believe it's just these two books, so it's just a duology. I had read Firefly Lane ages ago and I hadn't picked this up because Firefly Lane was so sad. This is also so sad, and I knew that going into it because it is Kristen Hanna. But yes, this whole book pretty much just deals with grief, and that is the whole story. It mostly follows Tully. So in the first book is following Tully and Kate. This book follows Tully. It goes really in depth into her childhood, which was also very sad, and just her as she like rose to fame pretty much, and her downfall after that. Her whole downfall pretty much is due to her grief. There was just a lot that happened in this book. It was just very heavy. It dealt with Kate's family, and it was a lot. But you know what? I loved it. I'm pretty sure this book made me cry, and I gave it a 4.5. So if you have not read Firefly Lane, I would definitely recommend it. Now that I have finished both of these, I can watch the show, which I think is on Netflix. So I'm very excited about that. I had been putting that off until I finished this book, and now I can watch it. Okay, going into June, the first book that I read was The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon. If you did not see it, I did a whole vlog on this, a whole reading vlog, and oh my gosh, I loved this book. I go into more detail on what I enjoyed in it and just like little bits and pieces of the book in that video. So I'm not going to do all of that again here, but wow, this was everything I wanted it to be. And I cannot wait to get to the second book. I gave this a 5. This was my other 5-star. It was fantastic. I don't think there's really any content to mention in this. There was a little bit of mentions of like loss, but outside of that, this was a pretty light-hearted read. And yes, I would absolutely recommend this. Okay, the next book that I finished in June was Bersinger. I loved this. This series has just been absolutely fantastic. I have one more, and then I think the final book, it follows a different character, I believe. Yes, so this is the third book. This was the first one that I had not read yet. So I had read the first two a few times in the past and never quite got through this one. I had started it, I think, once and just put it down and never continued. I have no idea why. These books are fantastic and I love them so much. I can't say too much about this because it is the continuation of the story and it is kind of so far into the story at this point that I don't want to say anything and ruin it, but it is very good. If you are looking for a really good fantasy series, I would suggest reading Eragon. I gave this a 4.5. And the final book that I read this quarter was Demon Copperhead. Technically, I think I finished this July 2nd, but I read this all throughout the month of June. So I am counting it for the second quarter. This is also the very first book that I ever tabbed, and I don't know why I had never done this before. I loved it. I had such a good time tabbing this book, and there was just so much in here. This book follows Damon Fields, aka Demon Copperhead. He is known as Demon throughout the entire book. I think his real name is only mentioned a couple of times. This book is about resiliency. It is written in a way that sounds like he is telling his story, almost like he is writing this book. It starts out literally the day he's born, and most of the book is, I think, between the ages of like 10 and maybe 17, 18, and I believe it ends in his early 20s. So much happens in the story. It deals with poverty, it deals with addiction, foster care, child labor, child abuse, love, loss. It is heavy. This book has so much just really intense stuff in it, and I am both so glad that I read this. I think that this is an important story, and I'm also so glad that I finished it. I would say that if you are interested in this, I would definitely look at content. So there was a lot of, let me see, I actually wrote down the content as I was going because there was just so much of it. Oh, there was so much strong language. There were a few times where I wasn't sure I wanted to continue because the language was so bad. There was frequent use of God's name in vain, which was really hard to read. There was drug use, addiction, pregnancy and birth, pregnancy loss, child abuse, neglect, domestic abuse, parental loss. There was brief mentions of sexual content, and then there was one open door scene. Yeah, it was a lot, but it was such a good story and it was told so well. If I were to ever read from this author again, I would definitely look at content before I go into any of her other books. And if her other books are written really similarly, especially with the language and God's name in vain, I think I would probably pass. I am still really glad that I read this because I do think that it's an important story and I think that it was really powerful. I gave this book a 4.5, and this actually probably would have been a 5-star if it weren't for some of that content, because that was hard to read. But yeah, I did give this a 4.5. Okay, so really quickly, my favorite book of this quarter was Emma M. Lyon. Of course it was. It was so good. And my least favorite book of this quarter was Her Pretty Face. So overall, I really enjoyed this reading quarter. I think that I had some really great books in here, and I definitely had some longer books this quarter. I still ended up reading 10, which I think last quarter I read 11. So 10 books is still a lot for me. So that was really good. I was kind of impressed with that. I guess real quick, we should go through like my reading goals. My first goal was to read 24 books. I have now read 21. If I read 21 books, that's really good. Okay, I'm probably gonna surpass 24. Read at least half of my physical TBR. So at the time, half would have been 12 books. I have read 12 books now off of my physical TBR. So I kind of want to see how many books I have left, and then maybe I'll change that number just to give me a little bit of a, I don't know, another goal, I guess, that I can meet for that. But either way, I have met that goal now. Review every book I read. How many books have I reviewed so far? I've reviewed half so far. So I have reviewed 10 books out of 21. Oh my gosh. So I haven't even reviewed half. I have some catching up to do. It's fine. We're going to do it. Read and review 5 arcs. I have read and reviewed 2. And I have just now started on another book, another arc. So I'm pretty much on track for that. I'm going to read 2 more, I think, this quarter, and then 1 for the last quarter. Read 2 nonfiction books. I am still in the middle of The Weight of Glory. I've made some progress, but it's slow. So hopefully I can finish that soon and start another one. Buy another bookshelf. Have not done that. This one's just continuing to pile up. I think I do have some other places that I can put books in my house, so I may try doing that until we get a new one. But I have been looking. I just haven't found one yet. 7th one was only purchase books I expect will be a 4 or 5 star. I've definitely done that. 8, research book content before adding to my TBR. I have gotten pretty good at that. So I'm going to say yes. Post at least 2 videos a month. Oh, I'm at weekly now, so that is great. I've been posting weekly. And 10 was I changed this one to reach 500 subscribers. I think I'm pretty much on track for that because I'm almost at 250, so like halfway, and we're halfway through the year. I'm not really paying attention to this one as much though, and so I kind of want to move my bonus goal into this spot. So I think I'm going to get rid of this because I honestly don't really, I don't want to say I don't care, but it's just not something that I'm really paying very close attention to at the moment. I'm just enjoying making and posting videos and talking to you guys. I think I'm going to change that just because it just isn't something that I'm really focused on right now. So I'm going to move my bonus goal into this 10th spot. And that goal was 4 deep dive studies of 4 books of the Bible. For quarter 1, I did Colossians. For this quarter, I actually did not do a deep dive study on a specific book. I went back and did like my motherhood study again, and I really enjoyed doing that. But I recently bought some new Bible studies, which I think I'm going to share that in another video, but 2 of them are specific books of the Bible. So I will hopefully still be able to do 4 this year. That's still the goal, but I think as long as I'm in the Word, that's the important thing. But I still would like to study specific books. I think that is always really nice. I did just recently start a new Bible study that is, again, it's more of a topical study. It's not of a specific book. So I don't know how much that's going to set me back, but that's what I'm doing at the moment. So those are all my goals. Those were all the books that I read. And I am hopefully going to have a really great quarter 3. If you have watched all the way through this video, I would love to know what your favorite and least favorite books were for this quarter. And if you've read any of these and enjoyed them, I would love to hear about that as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.